Welcome to the Legacy Tree Podcast. We're the team at Legacy Tree Genealogists, and this is where we talk about the real side of family history. The surprises, the roadblocks, the emotions, and the stories that don't always fit neatly into a pedigree chart. From DNA discoveries to archival finds, cultural history to personal moments, we have honest conversations about what genealogy actually looks like and why it matters. Because when it comes to preserving what matters most, you deserve to put your family history in our hands. In today's episode, Genealogy and AI Knowledge is Power, we're joined by genealogy educator and industry trailblazer Louise Cooke, alongside Kristen Britannic, an advanced North American researcher at Legacy Tree Genealogists. Together, they explore how evolving technology and AI are reshaping genealogical research, what tools are worth using, what to be cautious of, and how combining innovation with expert analysis can help uncover richer, more accurate family stories.
Hi, I'm Kristen Britannic. I'm a senior researcher at Legacy Tree Genealogists, and I'm here with Louise Cooke today to talk about the artificial intelligence in genealogy research and what that means for us as researchers. And to start off, I'm so thrilled to be talking to you today because, AI is everywhere and it's such a hot topic and it's kind of coming into all aspects of our life. So of course, as genealogists, we're like, how can this help our research? And I have a particular interest in this topic because I previously worked in archival digitization and I saw the way that all this technology was kind of helping with research, but also like the stumbling blocks, like the things that were still really hard for people to do. And AI has really changed a lot of those things and how we can kind of interact with information. So Lisa, I want to start off, like, what are you most excited about the advent in AI and genealogy research?
Well, hi, Kristen. I think what blows me away is I think we went from 0 to about 100 miles an hour in a second with AI. I mean, did you think that 2 years ago we would be even having this conversation? Probably not. It was around, it was developing, but it wasn't in the back pocket potentially of every researcher. And that's what's different. So to me, it's always exciting. I have to be honest. I've been a Google expert. I've written books on Google. I've done classes for, 17 years in my podcast. And that was always the big leading trend. It was expanding. They kept coming out with new tools. And then it kind of got quiet and the whole industry kind of got quiet and there wasn't a lot of new technology. We weren't at Roots Tech every year going, holy smokes, look at the 20 new tools that just came out. That wasn't happening. And I was kind of talking to my husband saying, I don't know. I'm getting a little bored. I really am. And boom. Yeah. And I actually went through kind of a health situation for about a year. So it was like being Rip Van Winkle. When I went into that health situation and I kind of went offline for about a year, this was not a thing. It was not in our, an everyday, here's your account at ChatGPT. I came back. And it was like being Rip Van Winkle. Everything was different. And that's exciting. Whether it's good or bad or causing us grief or exploding our genealogy, it's still exciting because it's so new.
And one of the most interesting things, so there's a lot of different types of AI out there, but the most common one we're probably going to talk mostly about today is large language models. And though those are things like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. And what's so cool about them is you talk to them like a regular person. So, for years, I was always like, oh, I know computers can do this, but I can't program. I don't want to have to learn to code. It's like learning another language. But I'm just going to stick and take forever to copy and paste and do formulas in Excel. And now these problems that would take me a week to do in Excel, I can have done in 3 minutes. And that's like really revolutionary that you can just talk to it. And then also it's kind of conversational. So if it doesn't go right the first time, you can give it that feedback and say, hey, I actually really wanted this. And, so it's really, it's just so accessible to everybody, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it is. And in fact, let's just get right into tips. Here's one of my first tips. Don't talk to it nicely.
Yeah.
It's so funny. See, because we think it's conversational. It's designed to give you a feeling that you're working with your new genealogy best friend. You're not. And in fact, they just did a study that just came out that said you get 5 to 7% better results if you're nasty to it.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yes. So, this idea of, I mean, somebody sent me a chat the other day and they're like, oh, look at this. And I see her questions and she's like, oh, yes, yes, please. Thank you. And I'm like, who are you talking to? So, we do not have to be polite to AI. And here's my recommendation for genealogists is there's a good reason not to be. One, I think you're going to get better results. I really do. And that's kind of what is proving out in some of the testing. But the second thing is that it will keep a little bit of a guardrail for you to know the difference, know what you're interacting with. And, when we get personal with people like you're a sweetheart. And I love already talking to you. And it's been like 5 minutes and we're internet,
Yeah.
tech geeks. So we have lots in common. Well, my goodness, AI is going to have all kinds of things in common with me as it talks to me about genealogy. But it is not my friend. And what happens is our defenses come down, right? When we get very familiar. And I think that's a cautionary tale for us as we work with AI to understand it needs to not come down. And we need to understand that this thing that we're talking to is potentially going to take that information and spread it all over the internet. Who knows? We do not have any privacy. So that would
Yeah.
be my first real tip is
That
to
actually
stay in charge.
that actually leads to one of my tips, and that was to take a little bit of time and learn at a basic level what large language models are.
Yeah.
Like, they were really designed to predict how language returns. And if you go like look, behind the curtain, it's like numbers and math and things like that. It's not personal. So like you're
Yeah.
saying, you don't have to be polite to it, but you do get better results. First of all, if you know its strengths and weaknesses. So one of the things that I'm concerned right now is that they're getting, I would say maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, we were all sharing these really hilarious hallucinations where it was just making up things that like were completely fabricated and were very easy to be verified to be false. And now those hallucinations are going down, down, down with each model, but the ones that exist, I feel like are slipping by a little more. So again, like you're saying, to like always kind of have your guard up and take the time, even though it feels like a very human interaction, to kind of step back and understand of like, this is behind the curtains, is all math and numbers. And it still can have mistakes. And I always like, whenever I talk about AI to like people who are new to it, I'm just verify, verify, verify. It can be a tool, but it's not the end all to be all. And if you ever want to make it to like have any kind of genealogical conclusion, you still need to do, the, nuts and bolts research to like make sure your conclusions are sound. So that was we're kind of on the same wavelength with the kind of be aware.
Okay, so if it's not our best friend and it's not a professional genealogist, I'd love to hear from you, and then we could talk about
Sure.
what is it? What are the key ways? If you had to describe it as somebody you're working with, how do you describe how you use it?
Absolutely 100% a tool. I describe it as just another tool in my toolbox. DNA is actually kind of a good analogy for me because you have to understand what there's like all these numbers, and you have to understand what they mean and how to how to interpret the DNA. So how are you interpreting your results you're getting from LLMs? And early on, then I would always say use AI to help with those annoying tasks. Like you have a list of names and you need to separate them and organize them, and it would take you forever in Excel, and do it in AI. AI is getting better, and I think the tasks it can do is kind of expanding. So that advice isn't as relevant as it used to be. But even today, I still see it as just another tool in our toolbox. What about
I
you?
totally agree. And if you want to think of it like people, I mean, it's like having a personal assistant. It's like having a
Yeah.
secretary, somebody who can do the notes. It's interesting. When I got back to work this last year, I wasn't up to working full time. And what I quickly found out was I don't have to. I can work 4 hours a day and accomplish what I was doing at 8 hours a day before. And that's because, like you were talking about, the processing, the tallying,
Mhm.
the collecting, the reformatting, all that stuff that was taking so much time is being done instantly and very, very quickly. So even if I never used it to help me analyze the conclusion, I just think the value that it can bring to come alongside you, like you say, as that tool next to the wrench that you pull out of your tool belt, and it works so much faster. That just means more time finding ancestors. At least I hope that's what that means.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things I'm most excited about is it's kind of making all these things that were previously hidden and bringing them to light, and we can make kind of more advanced like connections. It's really great for like fan research. Like it's kind of like speculative. You're like, okay, if I see something interesting here, I can go back and verify, but this is going to help me find that interesting signal. An example of this is, so I do a lot of United States research, a lot of New York and Pennsylvania before 1850, which just there's no records, nothing exists. You know, we're digging in land records, and I rely heavily on the pre-1850 census returns, where it's just tick marks. You know, we have an age range, we have a gender, and things like that, and we have to like really extract as much as we can. So I was looking for a migration pattern where I had a family. They had a very common last name. I think it was Cole, and they moved from a place in Vermont to a place in New York State, which is a very common migration route. And then so I compared the 1820 census, all the names in their little town, to the 1830 census when they moved, to see who moved with them, like the other families. And before, I could have done it in Excel, but I would have like never taken that kind of time, you know, to extract all the records. And like an AI did it in like 5 minutes. So like, again, it's making connections that were hard to process as a human more visible, which is really exciting.
It's interesting. One of my favorite things that I'm interested in the tech world is kind of data visualization.
Yeah.
So, how do I find other tools that help me take data that I have in my genealogy research and see it in a new way? And one of the things I often teach on is using Google Earth in that way to
Yes.
take data points and then turn them into an interactive data visualization. Anything that helps you see those piles of paper on your desk or those digital files on your computer in a more comprehensive, cohesive way. And I think that's kind of what you're describing too, is how AI can do that. Takes a lot of legwork, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of detail. And the fact that it can process that so quickly, now we're free to actually imagine, what are the new ways I want to see this? What perspective have I not considered before or haven't had the time and ability? But now I have this tool that can help me do that.
Yeah, I could tell we're kindred spirits here, because as soon as
I
you said that,
know.
I was like, yes, please, me too. And I used to work in like museums and archives, and I worked with an app developer because our museum was developing an app, and he was complaining, and this is like 10 years ago now, that like, I'm so tired of people using computer like paper. Like they're just recreating books in these apps. Like it's not interesting. Computers can do so much more. And I was like, yeah, I would love them to do more, but it's hard. You know, it takes knowledge and expertise. And now I feel like AI has given us a way to like interact with like digital data and information, that it's not just recreating books. Like, you know, we can kind of take it to the next level and do more advanced things. So I'm excited
Well,
about that.
yeah. I mean, even in that conversation, so with an LLM, with a chatbot, you are talking back and forth, and that's the beauty of it, is it is a conversation. And I don't know about you, but like the other night, I sat down with my husband and I was describing something. You know, I'm sure he heard baseball scores in his head or something, but you know, I'm going on and on about describing this whole situation. And I had this epiphany in the middle of describing it. And it's sometimes just that process of the conversation or
Yes.
the ability to verbalize or to talk about it. And now AI even has that ability to, you can do the audio version. It can literally speak the answer back to you. You can now speak your answer and not even have to type it into the prompt. But that, I'm hoping, and I'm so far experiencing that it is the process of the conversation that actually ignites more innovation from me, from my side. And then I can say, hey, I just thought of this. I want you to go find this and let me, you know, bring this back to me. And it does it very quickly in real time, which also means you kind of don't lose the inspiration in the
Yeah.
moment because you can quickly act on it.
Yes, that's so true. And what's so interesting is it's also kind of a way to like gather and like get more information quickly. Um, and I had an example where I was researching this little town in New Hampshire, and they had a like a boundary dispute with another town. So they're kind of like fighting back and forth. And it started out as a big township, and it got whittled down, and it, you know, it was really confusing to figure out, where do I look for these people, or like where did they actually live? And so I used ChatGPT's deep research feature, which, as you know, like kind of goes, it gets you like a little bit more richer, like it actually brings up citations. And it pointed me to a master plan of the town where they hired a historian. And the master plan was just sitting as a file on their website. Like it wasn't coming up on my Google searches. And then I open the master plan, and as a genealogist, I'm loving the footnotes, and I get a book, and somebody has like a book on the whole town's history and like the surveyor who surveyed it and the land dispute. And I got it from interlibrary loan at my library, and I was like, the digital sent me to analog. Like it doesn't, it's not a replacement. I didn't just cite that deep research query, but I went back and I got the book and I saw it for myself. And honestly, like it was, as somebody who's an expert in kind of like using Google for research, we're only looking at page 1, maybe page 2 of the search results, and we're not digging deeper. So that might have been in page 4 or 5, but deep research like kind of like pulled it up to the forefront, and I was able to kind of like really get, access this information that was out there in a new way.
And to be able to interact with your own searching.
Yeah.
Before we would do the initial search and then we'd try to revise it and then we'd do some filters. This is much more in real time. And as you said, it's finding things. Thank goodness search is finally now integrated with all the major chatbots, because that wasn't even the case, 6 months ago or so. But now,
yes, that's so true.
Right? And so now it's finding those ideal exact matches, maybe buried somewhere, as you were describing, that just, I don't know, page 32 of Google search, I never would have looked at it, right? And I'm sure that would have been the case for you. So that's a huge benefit. We've been talking a lot about the benefits.
Yes.
The things we're excited about, which we certainly are. What are some of I'm interested to know, what are some of the challenges and the concerns that you may have about it? Because this is all the Wild West.
Yes. As somebody who worked in archival digitization, I'm contractually obligated to say, do you know how much stuff is still sitting in the basement in the archives? It's analog that these, LLMs have no access to. And as people, it's very hard for us to access them. I've been in the basements of the courthouses. I've been deep in the stacks, and there's just stuff that's just not going to be digitized in the near future. And the answers to our biggest brick walls might be in a courthouse basement somewhere, and they probably are. So I think we kind of have to, as we're getting excited about finding this new information, we have to keep in perspective that it's really a sliver of the historical record. And like, yes, it's a lot, but it's not, we're interested in the originals, the smaller records that would never be published in a book, because it's our ancestors. So I think we have to keep that in mind as we're working, that it's not the end all to be all.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I was talking on one of my videos about how I was making location guides. Gosh, this is one of my favorite things to use AI for, is creating location guides, research guides, that type of thing. The compilation, the formatting is just fantastic. Well, I had put in, I was working on an area in East Prussia, which would then be Germany, which eventually parts of it was Poland. But at the time, the ancestor lived there, it was East Prussia. And so their counties, I guess what you would call them a Kreis. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And but I have two, great grandparents, one from different Kreis. And I put the one from my grandmother in for the one from my grandfather. And anyway, interesting, it spit out this gorgeous, perfect, intricate, linked, lots of links, research guide and locality guide. And it was completely wrong because I had the wrong county. So it's because we're still in charge. Also, our errors can still slip in, even not meaning to, and that can skew it. And there's nothing to alert us. So I think we have to remember too, even when we are the originator of, the information into it, we still have to scrutinize what's coming out, because we may have made the error, which can send it down a complete rabbit hole. And it's not going to flag you necessarily that, hey, that didn't exist. In fact, sometimes now, this is one of my favorite things to do in prompts, is to say, and if this does not exist, do not create it. Do not make it up. Alert me that it cannot be found, or I might be incorrect. And you can just have that set in all your prompts and it works great.
Yeah. And like also, there's still areas for as fast as it's developing and as good as it's getting, there still are areas for improvement. Like I found that like it's just generally terrible at mapping. Like I have yet to find like a good application, because we want to put people on maps. It helps us, understand them in place and time. And man, there's just like so many things of like, oh, I'd love to like show a visual of this migration pattern or like these people over time. And it's just every attempt I've made has just been terrible where I've just shelved it. And that's actually another one of my recommendations is if you have a prompt and that's a flop, keep a list. And then as new models get released, retry it because I've had this is like I was programming automations in Word and Excel and like they were flopping before, but then with the last ChatGPT model, it like just whizzed right through it. And again, I'm not a programmer, so that's why like I don't know what the code like the errors are. So that's another recommendation is as they get better, try things that have previously failed to like judge where we're at.
Well, the funny thing is, Kristen, you don't have to be a programmer anymore because they're the ones I think who are first losing their jobs. I mean, it's crazy the programming that's one of the biggest things that AI is changing, which I'm hoping might open up some new avenues for, again, more genealogy tools. Because in the end, that blank space where the prompt is can be intimidating. If you feel like you have to rebuild every time, you have to come up with something new every time. And I think one of the things we're going to see in the industry that's going to be changing is there are going to be people who get really good at that and can create specialized tools. Eventually, you'll have your mapping tool, but you'll probably have to subscribe. It's going to be a standalone, company that's doing it, who has perfected it and given you a whole platform. Although I can say, because I love mapping, we have so much in common.
I know.
Love maps too. Google Earth still is actually starting to creep in, and they have told us they are going to incorporate more and more AI.
Of course, yeah.
The way my favorite thing is to use the software version because there's a lot more bells and whistles than there is on the web version. But I think the software version is going to go the direction of using AI to help builders and developers. I think the web version eventually is going to become more like what we might want to use it for, which is compiling data, telling stories, and that type of thing. Right now, I'm still using the software to do that because I still think it's the best way. But Google's already talking about how the way that can be incorporated. And I mean, every once in a while, I'll shoot them a note and just go, here's what I think. I mean, I don't know. They always ask for feedback. Ask for the tools that you want.
Yeah, and that's what's so interesting to me is, we've talked about like other big advents in genealogy research like DNA or the ancestry and having records online. Like I have my granny's research binder and it's her writing letters and waiting to like get records back. But this is just like, those are really specific to genealogy and like AI is just like, you can't escape it. Like you're like, okay, I don't need AI to like, do this very simple thing on the internet. But it's everywhere. And I think it will be interesting to see in the long term of like where that settles, of like where it actually is useful and makes sense and where it kind of like fades away of like, we actually don't need AI for this. So that will be interesting to see in the long run how that happens.
Well, I think probably one of the things viewers might be thinking about and wondering about, and of course I'm wondering in talking with you, is oftentimes the biggest question is, which one should I be using, right? There's a lot to choose from. I can think of at least 5, Grok, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. So we have a wide range to choose from. My guess, for me, the answer is there is no one perfect one. It's about the task. What task are you doing? So do you want to share some of your favorite chatbots and which areas and tasks you use them in?
Sure. So I do tend to use the one I pay for the most because, you get more features. So and what's interesting is those differences are kind of settling. Gemini was behind before, but the latest version of Gemini is like, really pretty good. Yeah. So they all kind of, still have a little bit of strengths and weaknesses. For the most part, most of them can accomplish most tasks reasonably well. Claude is very good at like making pretty like interactive like visuals. Like it'll do the code for you and make like a little temporary web page for what I'm trying to do. And like, but then when it tries to generate images, they're hilariously bad. So I always advise people to experiment. A lot of the free accounts will get you pretty far. So try a couple and see which one you like the best. And then maybe, as you get more comfortable with it, you might want to subscribe to one. Or you just jump through all of them, using up all your free limits, so there's a lot of different ways to approach it. And what's so interesting is they just, when a new model releases, it's like, oh, well, now this one's the best. And then, of course, the other company has to come and that one's the best. I think back to the days of like where everyone got on the internet through American Online and how that's like gone now.
yeah.
So like, I think it'll be really interesting to see, which ones survive, because right now we're kind of in that Wild West territory. What about
Yeah.
you? Do you have any recommendations or preferences?
Yeah, I did a video on this on my website a couple of months ago where we took a particular task and ran each one through it and scored it, you know. And
Mhm.
in a way, we don't have time to do that every time we have a task to do. But I would say that that's where the monthly subscription, people might be thinking when you hear subscription, you tend to think for a year, but you can do it monthly and you can sometimes do free trials. So if it almost helps to be project oriented, you can say, I'm going to work on this
Yeah.
project right now. I tend to multitask, so I tend to have lots of little things going on. But if you know you're going to do a big project, it might be worth saying, I'm going to devote this month and get these photos done. And I'm going to test them all and then pay for the one that gives me the better results. I'm not having to come up against running out of tokens and having limits on what I can do. That being said, right now, when it comes to images, boy, it's nano banana.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's which is you can get through the AI Studio with Google. It's just amazing, and they are really running with that. And if I'm really like searching for information, I'm still using Gemini. I find that it's still, and I think it's just it has the advantage of the Google synergy and being part of that. When I'm computing, when I'm particularly even assembling like location guides and that kind of thing, Grok is fantastic. I mean, it is so analytical. It is so, it gets me. So I really love using it for compiling research guides and location guides, which are huge helps. And it's funny because those are kinds of things that I think your average hobbyist didn't used to bother with, right? There
Yeah.
are so many tasks that I know as a professional, you do. You create timelines, you write out and flesh your narratives, you get your location guide put together. But as a hobbyist, a lot of times you feel like you can get away with not doing it. But I think now you don't have to because you can do it so fast. And what a massive advantage. It's going to save time, it's going to save money, it's going to save headache if you do some of that prep stuff now using AI before you launch into a big research project. I'm using Perplexity because PayPal offered it. If you had a PayPal account as up to about December 31st of 2025, you could get it for free for a year. So that's been really interesting, but it's been a little underwhelming. So
Mm.
it's pretty good at writing. It can do some great research, grabbing stuff online for me and finding things. But I find myself jumping over to Grok and jumping over to Gemini quite a bit. And it's so funny because so many people talk about ChatGPT. I think it probably has the best marketing campaign going. But I've used it and it's great, but it's not wowed me compared to, depending on the task, what some of these others could do for me. So I haven't
Mhm.
taken the plunge and paid for it. But they have a big advantage because they
So what's
definitely,
what's really interesting too is like you kind of have to consider, again, knowing what you're using, that they also kind of keep like the history of like what you've
yes.
fed it before, and you can change that in your settings. I've actually left it on most of the time when I use ChatGPT. Sometimes I'm like, oh, this is just feeding me back, based on what I had previously asked. But it's really interesting because I feel like ChatGPT, because I used it the most, gets my style more. So like,
Yes, that's an advantage.
it knows what I'm looking for. And again, that's an advantage, but also
Hmm.
sometimes a disadvantage because I'm like, are
Yes.
you really like, I kind of had it, I asked her the question that like I probably shouldn't have asked it, like because it was just telling me what I wanted. It was like a surname origin. And I was like, could this be Dutch or could this be Welsh? Because again, these old published genealogies were saying it could be either, or it was definitely Dutch or definitely Welsh. And like, I was like, I think you're just telling me what I want to hear. So like I kind of like had to back away from that line of inquiry and like kind of have a different approach because I feel like you know, they probably weren't going to be able to provide me with a really good answer. So that was kind of interesting to me of like how that history of what I asked it before came into play.
Yes. Well, and that gets back to the importance of prompts. It's all about what you put in. It's like cooking, right? What
Yeah.
you put in, what you leave out, it all makes a difference. And I don't know if everybody realizes that Gemini has something called gems,
Hmm.
and you can create and save your prompts. But what they have built in is that little magic wand feature. So when you type in your initial prompt, you can click the magic wand, and the AI will develop a far better prompt geared for AI. So even if I'm not going to be using Gemini to do the particular work, I often use Gemini to craft the prompt.
That's a great tip. I love that.
Yes, and then save it. And you can even, I've got some of them programmed now where all I have to do is go hi, and it'll say, okay, great. Hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to make a location guide? I'll need to know a place and a time frame. It starts to prompt me because that's built into the prompt. So that can be a really big help no matter what AI chatbot you're using.
Yeah. Um, so do you have any advice for people who want to know more but are just kind of overwhelmed? Like, what would your advice to be to get them started or to have them dive in?
Oh, it's a great question because it can be very overwhelming, and it feels
It
like
is.
each day you turn on your computer, it's changed.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things I would recommend is pick a task. So, don't feel like you need to apply AI across the board in everything you're doing. Pick one thing that you're doing and say, let's see what AI can do for me. In fact, I often ask AI, what can you do for me? Here's the challenges. What can you do and what are you not going to be so good? In fact, I even did that during my comparison. I asked each one of them what its strengths and weaknesses were, which is very interesting. So I think that picking one task and then thinking it as a tool, go over to Gemini Gems and get your prompts developed there, and then test drive it in some of your favorite ones. Decide which one you think is doing well, and then depending on the length of the task, it might be, hey, I'm going to subscribe for a month and really get the full power of this, or I think I can get away with just doing this, with the free version. But that's a really good way to go, and like you said, it keeps your history. So if things go
Mm-hmm.
well, you can build on that. How
Yeah.
about you?
That's also my advice is like pick one thing that, maybe it was an annoying task you don't want to do or something you thought of that just, you're overwhelmed with before that, it was a technology thing that it could help with. And then I also kind of encourage like that experimentation and like also be don't feel sad or get like feel dejected if it goes off the rails because that's what happens. And then you can try again. You can ask again. I learned very early on that I'm not the clearest communicator because it was like, oh, I got it completely wrong because it was being very literal. It was like really interpreting what I was saying. So maybe my prompt wasn't the best. So like that's kind of my advice is like to be open-minded, be experimental, and don't get discouraged and to try again.
I agree. It's like you got to play with it.
Yeah.
Just give yourself, schedule an hour playtime and say, I'm just going to, nope, there's nobody watching. I'm not going to get in trouble. I can just try it. And if it's a big hot mess, okay, I'll go on to something else. I think a lot of people don't realize that sometimes when it goes off the rails, you've actually run out of, in a sense, you can call it memory tokens. You're
Yeah.
you're
Hmm.
running out of the horsepower that it can devote on that screen in one given conversation. So sometimes just starting fresh, either
Starting
somewhere
fresh. Yeah.
else or a new conversation. And of course, it's going to happen faster if you're not subscribed. But
Yeah.
that's oftentimes what's happening. Yeah.
And also, there's still limitations to like how much information they can take in. Like, yes, it's growing, but I had like 100-page report and I was trying to
Oh,
extract some
yeah.
information from it. And I was like, I think this is just too large. So, break it into pieces and it works so much better of like, give me all the birth, marriage, and deaths for these 3 generations instead of these 10 generations or something like that. So that's kind of another piece of advice is working in smaller parts and building up can sometimes get better results.
Hmm. And going back to this idea of before you start, ask it.
Yeah.
What would be the appropriate number of pages in my PDF. I have a 50-page PDF. I'd like you to process it, and it will say, you're going to do a lot better at 10 or whatever. It can actually coach you. So you say you tell it. And that's another thing when it comes to prompting is you need to give it some context and some context and expectations. And you are the perfect AI expert trainer for the non-AI person. And you're going to explain, and I often will say in 8th grade English, or explain it like it's a 4th grader. Why take something that's complicated and feel like you have to take it all at that high end level? Go ahead and have it explain it to you at really baseline level. And then you'll find you get your confidence and you can build from there. But it can really help you, but you need to tell it the level to what you expect. So if I'm doing anything genealogical, I'm going to say, you're an expert genealogist with 40 years of professional experience. So right there, I've already said, don't send me the genealogy for dummies information, right?
So we spent a lot of time talking about like all the great things it can do and help us be more efficient, but we've kind of been doing it in the abstract. I know you mentioned like locality guides, but are there other kind of favorite go-tos you like to use for genealogy research in AI?
Yeah. Well, locality guides, research guides, oftentimes I think it could be really interesting. I've done this a couple times. I've given it all of my data and said, here's my conclusion. I want you to scrutinize this. One of the things it does really well is tell you how awesome you are.
I
And
know,
that is
I
not
noticed that
helpful.
too. Yes.
It will always tell you, that is brilliant. Oh my gosh, what a great job you did. I will say to it, I want you to scrutinize this as a 40-year professional genealogist, and I want you to tell me where the gaps are, which conclusions don't make sense, what am I missing? I ask it to critique, and I am finding that more and more as invaluable, really across the board in all kinds of things that I do, because it will spot things. I'm like, oh, darn, I missed that. Yes, of course. And that sometimes can be the key.
Yeah, that's a great example. My favorite go-to right now is have you ever used the tool NotebookLM in Google?
Oh my gosh, Kristen, I was
Yep.
just looking at that yesterday going, I need
Oh,
to get on
go
board
for
because
it. You do.
okay. Yeah.
So one of my favorite things to do is to take, those like old, like, muck books, like the published genealogies, the local histories. They're not sourced, they're not great, but man, they're great for hints and networks and speculation. So they're good for getting you started. And then so I'll go to the Internet Archive and I'll download the text version of these books, upload them to NotebookLM, and then I'll query it and be like, okay, the James Smith family from here, tell me about them. And like it makes family groupings, it connects, and then it will point right back to that book. And then you can start to add in your original records, like your land records, like my census tables I have in a spreadsheet and things like that. And you start kind of like building it and you can kind of like query it. And what's wonderful about NotebookLM is that it always has references to your original sources, and it has more guardrails. So it's not making up as much, like it's kind of like more of a controlled environment where it's always kind of pointing to some other information, and it pulls right up in the sidebar like the part you're referencing in a book or something. So that's why I love that tool. And then also recently with the latest release of Gemini, can do like visualizations like mind mapping, and haven't had as much success with those yet, but I'm sure they'll only get better as time goes on.
Well, I am really glad to hear about NotebookLM. It is on my radar, and so I'm definitely going to be focusing on that. And that actually you reminded me of something that I do use it for quite often. I think it's so interesting to go back to records that I might have worked with 10 years ago. Or I have a couple of autobiographies that, were typed up in the 40s or whatever from different people in the family. To upload that and like you said, start giving it commands. I want you to extract everybody. I had Grok taking every single name, creating, in a sense, a family tree, a visual family tree of all the names, and explaining the relationships. And it's amazing the extraction capability that it has. And then it can synthesize that information and start to give you new ideas. And then ultimately, I'm hoping that all of us start getting to a place where we feel like, I really think I could publish something. I think I could get this in a format that now my family can appreciate. Because, Krista, I think it's an amazing hobby. It's fun to do. It's interesting to learn about. But if we don't find a way to share it,
Right.
then it can potentially get lost after just a generation. So I've been using Nano Banana and creating images and actually using a combination of old photos and prompts to create images to reflect stories that I'm telling in the book that and you can even say, and I want this all in a cartoon format, or I want this to
Oh,
be in a
interesting.
Renaissance style, or something that my grandkids will enjoy.
Yeah.
Because yes, they might read the book, but they're much more willing to look at it if there's some pictures.
Yeah.
And you can preface right in the beginning, all of the imagery here is AI generated, and it's meant to represent the stories that you're about to hear. So
Yeah.
I hope that it does that for us.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we've covered so many like really like
I know.
wonderful and exciting things. Do you kind of have like closing advice? Hopefully we've inspired people, but do you have any kind of closing advice or somebody who's looking to dive in with AI?
Well, I think it's an ongoing tale of the good and the bad,
Hmm.
and when we use it with good intentions and good ways, we can expect good output. I'm a little worried. I'm very worried about how AI will be used in many different ways from different people, but we can only control what we do. So I would say I decided that wasn't going to scare me, and I was going to go ahead and use it in good ways for what I want to do. And I think that is one of the things that concerns people, particularly older people who have waited a long time to finally sit down and work on their family history. And it's a little intimidating to think that, oh my gosh, I'm getting into this area I'm not very comfortable with, or what if something bad happens? We can't control that. So I would just encourage people, you're a good person, go put good things into it and see how it can help you in wonderful ways to help and bless your family. And I guess it's okay to do it analog too.
Yeah.
I
I
think if it does all this for us, like after a while, you start looking at some of the big websites, Ancestry, My Heritage, and it's like, this is becoming automated. This is how
yeah.
this feels between hints and everything else, and it's suggesting the next couple. And if it gets fully automated, I'm going to go take up the new hobby of polar bear wrestling, because
Yeah.
I think I'm done.
Yeah.
Because the thrill of genealogy is that you get to do it yourself and make the discoveries. And so if you find that AI gets to be a bit much or is taking over, then take a break,
Yeah.
and do your own
I
thing.
I completely agree. I think the like concerns of like this Wild West, it's a
Yeah.
very powerful tool that a lot of people have access to. We don't know how they're going to use it. Are they going to generate a fake document that gets them into the DAR? Like, who knows?
Yeah.
And I think we need to take those concerns seriously, and we need to understand that something like that may happen, but we can only control our own actions. And I also believe in this regard, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So understanding these tools, what they're good at, their limitations, and then also that verification, like human verification or the answers in the analog archive. We can't forget those things. So I think those are kind of like the founding things. Like, while this is really exciting, we kind of have to ground ourselves to be responsible genealogists, putting the record into the future.
And that's what makes the point that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So this is a really comfortable, safe space, genealogy, to be getting yourself familiar with it. Staying ignorant of AI isn't going to protect you from it, but actually using it in an area like genealogy where it can benefit you and you're going to learn how it works, it's going to make you wiser as you interact and run into it in all other areas of your life. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I would argue that genealogists are well positioned because we're used to like scrutinizing evidence. Where did this
Yes.
come from? Who made it? Who's the author? How did I get here? How did this document end in this archive? And we can apply that same skill set to like when we're evaluating the results of things that came from LLMs. So I think
More
we're,
than ever.
yeah.
Yeah,
So we need to take those skills and run with them. And I think we'll be in good shape.
I agree.
Well, it was so lovely to talk to you today. This was so much fun. Again, I could talk about this
Yes.
for hours.
I know.
And I know we're kindred spirits here, but it was so fun to talk to you
And
today.
we got so many new ideas. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't wait to go try out NotebookLM, and maybe you'll try some gems. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
whole idea, is to share our experiences. Everybody's coming across little tidbits that work for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, share your ideas. It makes everyone better researchers. Well, thank you so much, Lisa.
Well, thank you. And I would invite everybody watching, if you are interested in what I'm doing, go check out genealogygems.com. I do a lot of videos and podcast episodes on AI, as well as many other non-AI things. But we have a lot of fun. And so there is the YouTube channel, and then there's the audio podcast as well. And how about you, Kristen? How do people get in touch with Legacy Tree genealogists and get some help when AI doesn't solve their problems?
Legacytree.com, and you can come and talk with one of our client solution specialists, and maybe we can help you figure out your problems with AI or with traditional methods. We use many methods to help our clients solve their problems.
Fantastic. Hey, great talking to you. We'll talk again.
Thanks for listening to the Legacy Tree podcast. If you're ready to take the next step in your own family history journey, we'd be honored to help. Put your family history in our hands and learn more about working with our team at legacytree.com.